right, so if I have to talk about love this morning, I want to start off by telling you guys the greatest love story I've ever heard. It's not mine, unfortunately, but it is my parents. So my parents, my dad was a coach at Oak Hill Academy. My mom was a teacher there. And so one morning, afternoon, whatever, she goes and takes her kids and has to walk back through the gym to get back to her classroom. And so my dad was, I guess, shooting around in the gym, just getting shots up, I don't know. And my mom gets almost out of the gym, and my dad's like, hey, now picture this. The Lord has put like the love of your life right in front of you. All he has to do is say, you want to go to dinner? But no, he says, hey, bet you can't make three-pointers. And my mom's like, now my mom was a basketball player, so this wasn't like a crazy thing that she could go and do. And so she was like, okay, bet. So it's crazy. And so he had a boys' ball. This was also with a boys' ball. And so she stepped up. Not only did she hit three-pointers, she hit the third, and he was like, no way, and gave the ball back to her. Then she went on to hit 5 in a row. She hit 5 in a row, three-pointers, like literally to win this man's heart over. And then drops the ball and is like, and walks out. Like, end of story. So that day, my dad goes home and he tells my uncle, his brother, he's like, I'm going to marry that girl. And what I want us to see here is that love makes you do crazy things, because my dad knew nothing about my mom. He didn't know her personality, if it was even good, didn't know if she was right with Jesus, nothing like that. He said, there is a beautiful woman that can shoot basketball. That's going to be my wife. Love makes you do crazy things. And also we see God's love on display through my mom being able to hit these threes. He obviously helped her out. And now you guys get to have me, because without that, you might not have me. But in all seriousness, I look back on my parents' life and I see more realistic illustrations of this. And so my dad, he passed away from cancer when I was 7. He battled it for 7 years. And when the time came for him to pass away, they took him off the ventilator, and he fought after that for an extended period of time. And I remember my mom, when she does talk about it, she talked about having to tell him, like, we're going to be okay, like, all is well. And you think about that, and you think about you're going through so much pain, you're fighting for something when you can just let go and go be with your Creator and not feel any pain. But the love that he had for his family, the love that he had for us, he fought. He kept fighting, because love makes you do crazy things. And also I think about my mom in this sense of a lot of times when he passed away, my mom became a single mom of a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And so she had to raise us, and she raised us obviously with a village of people, of course. And so a lot of times new parents or parents with little ones will come up to mom and be like, how did you do it? Like, how did your kids turn out decent? And she always says, by the grace of God and a village of people God put in my life. And she's right, without a shadow of a doubt, she's right. But what primarily drives this was my mom knew that she was rooted in the deep love of her Creator. She knew that's where her worth came from. And then through her parenting, she showed us that love. It's nothing that she did, but it was the Lord moving through her, because by no means are my parents perfect at all. But the Creator that moves through them, that uses them as a vessel, is. And I think about the village of people that were put in my life and my mom's life and my siblings' life, and that their love was rooted in God's love. And through that, they showed us his love. And so today we're going to be talking about live, loved, live, love. And that's a mouthful. Don't say it really fast. But I'm sure everyone has a story in here, a beautiful story, beautiful love story, something crazy that you did because you were in love with someone, this, that, and the other. But today we're going to be talking about how we cannot go and live love if we don't first know that we are loved. And so in order for us to be that love, in order for us to be love in a broken world, we must first know that we're loved deeply by our Creator. So I'm asking you two things this morning that I want you to be thinking about, pondering over the course of our time. And number one is going to be, this morning, do we know of the deep love that our Creator has for us? Do we know that? The far more loved than anything we could ever experience in this world. Do we know that love to be true? If we do this morning, have we rooted ourselves in that deep love? And are we pouring out that love to others? And so we're going to be in Isaiah 6 today. If you want to go ahead and open up there. So in Isaiah 6, verse 1 talks about a guy named King Uzziah. And King Uzziah was the king of Israel for 52 years. He reigned for 52 years. He was a man of God. And so he was a pretty good leader for them. And when he died, imagine being comfortable for 52 years. This was something that was very abnormal in their history. Imagine being comfortable with your leader for 52 years. You're like, okay, this is pretty decent. And then they die and you have no idea who's taking over, what's happening next. Chaos erupts, and Isaiah has this vision. So I want you to know that is the setup for this vision, and that's what's going on. And so in verse 1 it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up. And the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips. And I dwell in the midst of a people with unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. In verse 8 it says, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, here I am, send me. So what I want to first look at is the wonder of God that we see in Isaiah 6. This is not a passage this is a passage that is commonly used in the church. And a lot of times we skip over the wonder of God and get straight to, here I am, send me. But it's a setup of the wonder of God. And so in verse 1, we see Isaiah sees the Lord high and lifted on a throne. The train of his robe filled the temple. And after that, we see Isaiah introduce an aspect of his vision, which are seraphims. And seraphims are literally angels that were set on fire, that are set ablaze to worship God. And that this morning, they are constantly, all the time, not just this morning, they're constantly worshiping God, worshiping back and forth to each other. When we worship this morning, when we sang, Christ be magnified, joy in the house of the Lord, that we did not start the worship. We did not come in here and start the worship of God. More so, we joined in with the worship of God. That these seraphims, we join in with them. We join in with the angels that are literally set ablaze for the worship of God and the praise that he deserves. That we got the opportunity to be a part of that. That tonight when we lay our heads down and we go to sleep, they will still be worshiping God. That when we get up for work on Tuesday morning, they will still be worshiping God. That when our life feels like it's crumbling and the foundation is just shifting under our feet and we don't know, it's getting dark, that The angels and the seraphims they're still worshiping God, that he is worthy of that it never stops. It never stops. And what are they repeating over and over again? They're saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The fact that they're saying this back and forth to each other. They have a certain joy that when they say it over and over again to each other. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Holy is a word that means no error, and here it means no equal. Holy, holy, holy. And it's also important to note that while Isaiah said in verse 1, he sees the train of his robe filled the temple, we see the seraphim say the whole earth is full of his glory. That his glory is not confined to the temple. His glory is not confined to the throne room. That his glory is full and all over the earth. The earth is full of his glory. Isn't it good? Isn't it good to know that creation obeys our Creator? The God that we know, his glory extends to creation. It obeys him. He knows the stars, at each and every star. The wind blows at his glory. The sun rises at his glory. Everything he controls. Isn't it good to know that he is sovereign over all nations, over all kings, all dictators? We talked about in this vision, King Uzziah had died, and this vision comes right as Israel was freaking out. And it's like, no, I am sovereign over you. No matter, kings come and go, presidents come and go, dictators come and go, but I am sovereign over all. And no matter what political agenda or doom and gloom is being pushed on Facebook, whatever happening, that doesn't dent the glory of God. That his glory is never dented no matter what happened. The worship continues. The wonder continues. His glory fills the entire earth. And so in verse 5, we see a realization from Isaiah. So we see that Isaiah, he sees the wondrous holiness of God. He's face to face with him. And immediately he comes to the realization that he does not belong in this presence. He comes to the realization that he cannot be in the presence of this holy God. He's immediately struck with his sin. And he experiences what his sinful nature looks like in a holy God, in the presence of a holy God. What his sinful nature looks like in the presence of a holy God. And so a lot of times we have a man-centered view of sin. And J.I. Packer says it like this: because we ourselves are limited and weak, we fail to reckon with reality of his limitless wisdom and power. Because we are limited and weak, we fail to reckon with his limitless wisdom and power. See, a lot of times we don't like to talk about the justness of God, that God is a just God. And so you probably won't hear many sermons preached on the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And in this, God literally struck down a whole city and then told Lot and his family to go and don't look back. And Lot's wife looks back. So looks back and immediately is struck down, dead. And we think insane. We're like, why in the world would he do that? Like she just looked back. She was curious. It's human nature. We're curious. We're intrigued. But what we have, how we rank sin is not the issue. The issue is the magnitude of the God that we are sinning against. So a lot of times we like to say, oh, well, I mean, it's not that bad. You know, Isaiah, he didn't do really bad things. You know, he was just a little bit sinful, you know, and maybe I'm better than this person in this sin. No, like it's about the magnitude of the person that we are sinning against, not about the rank of the sins. And Isaiah knew that he had sinned far too much to be in the presence of God. He knew that destruction was the only thing that he deserved. He saw what it looked like face to face with a holy God. And then in verse 6 and 7, we see how God responds. And so from the altar, the place of sacrifice, this is when the seraphim took a burning coal to atone the sins of Isaiah so that his guilt was no more. That we have to see the picture, the visualization that the burning coal symbolizes the finished work of the cross. That when the seraphim touched this coal, this burning coal, to Isaiah, even though he was dead in his sin, he deserved destruction. He had no more guilt. He knew he was wrong. He knew he was full of sin. He confessed it. He knew he deserved destruction. And yet God still moved to action. David Platt, he calls this a scandalous act. An act that we take for granted far too much. An act that we don't really think about a lot. It's ingrained in us. It's something we hear all the time. And so he gives this example, and I thought it was too good not to share. And so no matter what political side you're on or what you believe about the government, yada, yada, whatever, if there was a judge on the bench that was seeing fugitives, seeing felons, whatever, and we knew they were guilty. I mean, they were literally guilty right in front of our eyes. We saw it. Everyone saw it. The whole nation saw it. But the judge looked at those people and he says, I know what you did, but you are free. We would go crazy. We would riot immediately. We would go for his head immediately. He would be off that bench. But isn't that what God does for us because of his son every day? Isn't that what God does for us because of his son? Because of his son paid the price for our freedom. That's what he did for Isaiah in this moment that we see in Isaiah 6. And for us through Jesus on the cross, that his love prevails. That is an absolutely scandalous act. But it was because he loved us so much that his love prevailed even that. And so I want us to flip to Isaiah 53. And first we're going to talk about the live loved part of this morning. And so I said earlier, we can't live love if we don't first know that we are loved. So this morning I want you to know that you are deeply loved. And we're going to read Isaiah 53, 4-6. Because this is a sacrifice. This is a visual that we have of the love that was provided for us through God's love, each and every one of us. And so Isaiah 53, 4-6 says, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. All of our griefs, all of our sorrows, all of our iniquities, every ugly thing about us, every bad thing about us, every unclean thing about us was atoned for us when Jesus died on the cross as a sacrifice for us. And by his wounds we are healed. Just like Isaiah, our guilt is taken away through the wounds of our Savior, through the blood shed on the cross. By his wounds, you are healed. We have a God that is omniscient. He is all-knowing from the beginning of time till the end of time. He knows our sin better than we know our own sin. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He knew everything that we would do, past, present, future. He knows all. And yet he still made a way. We're going to read Romans at the end of the service, but he died for us while we were still sinners. He didn't die for us when we were perfect. He knew everything that we would do, all the good, bad, ugly, and yet he still made a way for us. God knows every detail of your life, and yet he still sent his son to die in your place. That one day when we get to heaven and we stand face to face with God, we know that we were guilty and we deserved destruction, but yet we will stand and he will look us in our eyes and he will say, "You are my beloved child. You are free." Only because of his son. And not only is it love, but it's agape love. And so this is God's love for humankind. And so this is the highest form of love that we see in the Bible. This is the highest form of love that we see anywhere. Agape love is the highest form of love that can happen. And that is describing God's love for humankind. I think about the story that I told in the beginning and my mom's love for us. And I can't think of any more love than the love I have for my mom and the love she has for us. It is just like unfathomable that I would be loved more or could love more. But I am, but we are. And that's through agape love. It is hard to grasp, but we have to grasp it to be able to move on. We have to be able to grasp that we are incomprehensibly loved by an incomprehensible God. We will never understand it. And yet we are loved. If we don't first root ourselves in the deep love of God, if we don't first know that we are loved deeply more than we could ever imagine, we cannot go and be love for others. We must first root ourselves in this love. We must first live loved, know that we are loved in order to go and live love. And so, two, what I want us to know this morning is that God's love creates disruption. So I want us to go back to verse 8 in Isaiah 6. And verse 8 says, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?' Then I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" So we walked through the wonder of God. We walked through the worship, the praise, Isaiah's realization, how God provided a way through the burning coal to atone for the sins. We walked through all that. And then we get to verse 8 where we see Isaiah's response to this. His response for this experience of deep love that he had. His heart was forever changed, and he had a response of total abandonment. Total abandonment. His life was forever disrupted after this experience. His life was forever changed. He couldn't go back to living the same way. He must live differently. "Here I am, send me." He didn't say where or when, where do I need to meet, what do I need to do, like what do I need to know before I go? I need to fix this. No, he said total abandonment. This is his response. And so what I hope you see is that when we truly experience the love of God in our lives, we never look the same. And we have total abandonment because we can't go back to how it was before we experienced this love. That it's transformative power in our lives. That there's a disruption in our lives. It might look crazy to some. It might look weird to others. But like we talked about earlier on all those examples, love, it makes you do crazy things. And isn't that our goal for the kingdom of Jesus, for us to be a part of that and to go do crazy things in it? Thinking back to the seraphim touching the mouth of Isaiah with the burning coal. So that verse, Ed Newton, a pastor in Community Bible Church, said that his lips are touched because it is the opening of the outpouring of the heart. It is the opening of the outpouring of the heart. That he touches his lips because it is the opening of the outpouring of the heart. When Isaiah experienced the love of God, the outpouring of his life was forever changed. His heart looked different and his life showed difference. I don't know where the Lord has placed you in this season, in this year, in your life, but I do know that you're there for a reason. That you are placed there because the outpouring of your heart, you're placed in the situation that you're in because of the outpouring of your heart is needed in this broken world. It matters where you have been placed. It matters that your kids see the love of God through you. It matters that the people you work with at the office sees the love of God through you. It matters that whoever you see in passing, whoever you meet in passing, whatever your circles of influence look like, it matters that the love of God is shown through you. In every circumstance, season, and situation, our prayer is that you disrupt this world with the love of God over and over and over again. That you show others his love. Because when we are living loved, when we have experienced this love, when our lives have been changed, we want everyone else to also feel this same love. We want everyone else to also know that they are loved. And so sometimes there might be a tug on your heart to do something crazy, to do something that you're like, this is not in my comfort zone. But know that God's love, it makes you do crazy things. If you would have told me I would have been up here talking about this a year ago, that would have been absolutely insane to me. But God's love makes you do crazy things. So this morning we get the opportunity to take communion as a body together and talking about live, loved, live, love. I want us to, my prayer is that this is a reminder to you this morning of how loved you are. This morning, if you walked in here struggling to feel like you were loved or where you are mattered, that this morning, this time that we're going to have together is a reminder for you. That it's not something we have to do. That when Nate comes up and he speaks the word over you, I pray that you hear Jesus speaking it over you. This is my body broken for you. This is my blood shed for you. Not for you sometimes, not for you when you make me proud, but for you, period, for you always. That all those years ago when Jesus sat the disciples down and everything was lining up for him to be sacrificed, be crucified for us, that he spoke those words over them. But he spoke those words over them with you and me in mind. With everyone in this room in mind. That he loves you just as much as when he died for your sins. He loves you just as much as when he knew you from your mother's womb. He loves you just as much as when he knew you from way before you were even created. When he knew everything that you were going to do, he still loved you. Jackie Hill Perry said this. She said, I've started to rephrase certain prayers. I usually ask God to be with me or us or them. He's good, so I know he answers, but he's also already answered. He promised to be with, to never leave, never forsake me and us or them. So now I pray, God, help us to believe that you are with us. And it's made all the difference. That this morning, maybe your prayer is, help me to believe that I'm loved. Help me to believe that I matter. Help me to believe that I can enter a space and show the love that you showed me to everyone else. Or help me to believe that you are near. He's already promised all of this to us. And maybe this is your prayer today during communion. maybe to help you to believe.